Welcome to the Anonymous Andrew podcast. Life and the choices we make. The choices other people make. Why we choose to ignore the red flags. Red flags like gaslighting, cheating, addiction, mental illness, and much more. What role do they play in relationships? Follow me each week as we discuss these topics with anonymous guests and experts to hopefully become better humans, resulting in better choices. And like I say, been there, still doing that. Now on to the show. Welcome to Anonymous Andrew and Life and the Choices We Make. This is a podcast about life, my life, and yours. I'm going to talk about everything and anything related to relationships, breakups, mental health, physical health, sobriety, codependency, aging, and the list goes on. I'm calling the podcast Anonymous Andrew because, well, I belong to a 12-step program that has anonymous in the name. But I am quite the opposite. I am an open book. So at some point, I may have a co-host, but right now it's just me. I will be having friends on, or people who have traveled the path that I'm currently on. I would also like to have guests from other podcasts. I've become a podcast aficionado. I listen morning, noon, and night to many podcasts. I follow about 20 different podcasters. I started listening to them about 5 years ago. It was in a relationship, and I was not, let's say, doing the right thing. At least so I thought. So I turned to relationship podcast. I wanted to be a better boyfriend, or should I say, a better human. I have been in therapy my whole life, and I have been on so many medications, I can't remember half of them. I live with bipolar disorder. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have paranoid personality disorder, and I'm codependent. I've been called a narcissist, which I will get into in the future episodes, but trust me, I am everything but a narcissist. Or maybe I am. So you see that I cover the spectrum from one end to the other. I am 62 years old. I've been married. I'm divorced. I have 3 adult children and 2 grandchildren. I am also a suicide prevention advocate, and I've attempted suicide myself a long time ago. Actually, several times. I've created and was the president of a mood disorder support group for over 15 years. I left that organization and started a new one, which I currently run and I facilitate. I am currently single, and I have been single for the longest time in my adult life. We are talking about 4 months, a measly 4 months. I laugh because it's the truth. I recently started listening to podcasts about codependency and breakups. My last breakup was and continues to be a very difficult one. I will get into that later. To top all this off with a cherry, I am a tarot card reader, which if you had told me 20 years ago that I'd be doing that, I would have laughed you off. I am also a paranormal enthusiast. I love horror movies. Not the cheesy ones with maniacal serial killers like Halloween and Friday the 13th. While in their day, they were great. But as Hollywood often does, it kills that greatness with horrible sequels. I do like horror movies that are either based on true stories or evil versus good. To give you an example, I'm a huge Conjuring and Annabelle fan. So much that I have an entire tattoo sleeve based on the franchise. Yes, Hollywood did do sequels on Annabelle and The Conjuring and spin-offs, but I think they did them very well, in my opinion. So what is my goal here? I believe that I can help others continue to grow and heal and become the best versions of ourselves. I will be inviting guests to discuss various topics. There will be an Instagram account. Well, I will be able to interact with you, my audience. And I know I need to build that audience first. I know this may take a while to gain momentum, if at all. But if I don't try, I will never know. I've dreamed of doing this for years. I was either too immersed in a relationship, or chasing unrealistic goals and dreams, or I was simply drunk. Now that I am single and free of commitments on weekends and weeknights, I'm going all in. So today's episode, which is the pilot, I wanted to talk about relationships, mine in particular. As I mentioned earlier, I am in the midst of a breakup, or maybe post-breakup. And this is the longest time I've gone without a woman in my life. And I mean like in a relationship or a situationship or dating. I was always seeing someone between relationships in some way. The last one I was seeing for a little over 2 years. For now, we're going to keep some of the details about her private. The details of her life and our relationship, I must treat delicately. She will never likely hear this podcast. She wasn't much of a podcast fan. Once in a while, I would send her a podcast to listen to if I thought she would listen. I still don't know if she ever did. But let's talk about me and my codependency. Moreover, my lack of boundaries. I heard on a podcast recently, one of my other favorite podcasters and their guests, they said someone who is codependent would say to their partner, I am codependent and I need help. Is that okay with you? You see the irony of that statement? That's me saying, like walking up to my codependent partner, asking for permission to seek help from the relationship that I need help in. I find it funny, but it's because I'm in the midst of it. I've always gone from the end of one relationship right into another. Maybe a 2-month span of grief and processing. I would fill that void with another woman. This cycle repeated itself for my entire life. Thank you, Alexa. Then wash, rinse, and repeat. I wasn't and I'm not much of a cheater. Maybe once or twice back in the day. I simply don't believe in it. If I'm in love with you, I am loyal. I am yours. The few times I did cheat, there were drugs or alcohol, maybe a prostitute, but that was it. And again, long time ago. As I was prepping for this episode, I took some time to go through some old documents I found from my 20s and 30s. OMG, was I codependent and a repeat offender. I journaled a lot. I wrote poems, short stories, some fictional, some hybrid. I mixed what was real and fiction, making up scenarios. Maybe I'll share some of these rantings on Instagram in the future. So 2 podcasts that I recently glued myself to, actually there's several of them. One is called Breakup Boost with Trina and Heal Your Heartbreak with Kendra Allen. I've also become a huge fan of Rude Advice with Rudy A. He actually is the one who inspired me to do this. He's got a story similar to mine, almost identical. What's great about podcasts is that if you listen to a podcast who has guests, and it's like on a topic or something you're interested in or you're researching, you end up not only following the host, like you follow their podcast, but you end up following the guests. At least I do. The first podcast about relationships I started to listen to was called Relationship Advice. It was hosted by Chase and Sarah. Their format has changed. Chase is now the host and Sarah is the producer. They were great, and I still listen, but they have close to over 400 episodes. And it was their podcast that I began to follow their guests and their podcasts and their social media and so on and so forth. It was like a snowball cascade effect. I have learned so much about myself. For decades, we threw around the term codependency, like we do with the term narcissism today. I never saw myself as codependent. Man, was I wrong. I literally became addicted to women. The last relationship and recent and ultimate breakup, my girlfriend was not only beautiful and generous and charming, we truly had great times together. But then it got ugly. I'll save the details for later. While she tore a hole in my heart, I will protect her privacy again for now. You might call that codependent behavior, and it probably is. Some of the things she did to me and her behavior, I want to warn others about. Discuss the red flags, how I missed them, ignored them. Okay, I chose to ignore them, as I knew if I confronted her with my concerns and my suspicions, she might leave me. See, that's codependent behavior, not establishing boundaries. I simply did not want to lose her, like she was the last woman on earth. While I think that I will never find someone like her, she isn't a goddess, at least not anymore. Early on, I put her on a pedestal. I treated her like a queen. She referred to herself as a queen, specifically the Queen of Pentacles. That's a tarot card in the tarot deck. She's the one that taught me how to read tarot cards. We identified each of us with one of the cards in the deck. Again, she was the Queen of Pentacles, became the Queen of Swords. I was the King of Wands, and my personality card is the Justice card. If you know anything about tarot cards, the first 21 are called the major arcana cards, and for most part depict a character. For example, the devil, a high priestess, an emperor, a hermit, and so forth. More on that later. Maybe I'll make an episode on that. But let's get back to the breakup. Over the course of the relationship, she left me 5 times. Came back, left. Came back, left. Sometimes she came back on her own. Sometimes she came back because of my charming way of convincing her. Classic codependency. There came a time I didn't trust her anymore. I had good reason. Every explanation I got, I believed, or I wanted to. We even got engaged. Or I should say, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. I thought that would solve the problem. But the problem was me. I didn't know when I was being gaslit, lied to, and cheated on, or when to walk away. I never thought I would find someone as beautiful as her. My self-worth was at an all-time low. I thought my life would have no meaning without her. All right, sometimes I still think that way. But it's getting better and easier each day. I'm in therapy. I'm undergoing a treatment called EMDR. It's used to treat trauma victims like rape, childhood abuse, veterans of war. And no, in no way am I comparing my trauma to that trauma. In fact, they have modified the therapy for short-term trauma patients. It's called single incident trauma. So let's talk about my ex. Might as well give her a name. Let's call her Laura. I did so much for Laura. I grew my hair long because she liked men with long hair. I started to learn and speak her native language. I would learn her cuisine, how to cook and savor the different foods from her culture. She was an artist, so I tried to draw. She did arts and crafts, so I opened up a Michaels account. I bought her flowers every weekend. If she wanted it, I bought it for her. If she exposed me to it, I wanted it in. I thought it would make me look more attractive to her. I did whatever she wanted. I think in the end, it was to my detriment. Every day I think about her. I sometimes wonder, am I going to get a phone call telling me that it was a mistake to leave me? Classic codependency. I have this argument in my head. Then I think about the bad, then the good. It's a never-ending tornado of emotions and thoughts. I can't let go, but I know I will, and I must. Which brings me back to the reason I started this podcast. If nothing comes of this, I am putting my life out there and speaking out loud my thoughts. Between therapy, my support groups, meditation, and this podcast, I will get to the point where she is no longer adorning that pedestal that I put her on. I hope I have piqued your interest. I promise you we will cover so many topics. None of these topics are unique. You can find them on dozens and dozens of other podcasts, if not hundreds. But this is coming from someone who has met the devil and defeated him. And I'm referring to mostly my alcoholism. I do have a higher power. And I promise you we will not get into religion or go down that road. If I do, it'll be one episode or two on sobriety. I do have to talk about my sobriety. I have almost 8 years sober, and it's a big part of my story. At some point, we'll start taking questions from you. Once I establish a co-host and the Instagram account, I would like to hear from you and be able to answer your questions. In the meantime, if you do hear my voice on some platform like Spotify or Apple, and you like what you're hearing, give me a review. I'd love to ask for 5 stars, but I haven't earned that yet. Unless you think I have, and you'd like to give me 5 stars. But I do want to hear from you. In the show notes, there will be the 2 ways to contact me. I'd like to know what you like or dislike about this podcast. I can't help you if I don't know what it is you like, what you want to hear. I may be getting into this podcast market a little late, as it's taken off, it has been for a while. But I'm not really getting into this for the money. I did have to put some money down to get this going, of course. Breaking even would be nice. Right now, it's simply a venue for me to get out the thoughts that are in my head. And it will morph into something much bigger and better with your help. So friends, Anonymous Andrew saying thank you for listening, and until next time, if it feels good, do it. But please choose wisely.